Hi, welcome to Remote Roundtable. My name's Anaya. I'm the Director of Operations over at Indie Hall. Today we're going to be watching a roundtable between a couple of thoughtful members of our community where I ask them thoughtful, tricky, sometimes a little intense questions, and then we just kind of see what happens. We started doing these roundtables because we really wanted to highlight and showcase and share one of the best things about being an Indie Hall member, which is the camaraderie and the inspiration that we all get from each other, from the ways that we're doing things differently, from the struggles we have in common, and all of the different solutions we come up for them. Today we're going to be talking about journeys through career expansion. All the twists and turns, choices, mistakes, setbacks, triumphs in going from your first job to where you are now. Our panelists this time are Kara, Nicola, and Demetrius, all Indie Hall members who have made a lot of intentional choices and decision making through their career and are going to talk to us more about it today. Let's get started. I'd like to know when you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up? So I'll start. Anaya, you can use she or they. I wanted to be a spy or a mermaid.
A mermaid spy.
Yeah, there you go.
You'd be extremely efficient. Like extremely.
You want to go next, Tom?
Sure. My name is Demetrius Clark. My pronouns are he, him. And when I was little, I'm pretty sure I wanted to just make video games. Like that was like my end all be all excitement as a child.
I'm Nicola Black, pronouns she, her. And it's funny, my mom had this book when I was a kid where I'd fill in each year what I wanted to be when I grow up. And for the life of me, I can't remember any except for two. One of them was a lawyer. I have no idea where that came from because it's totally not in my interest at all. I just thought it was a good idea. And then the other was an artist. So there you go. That kind of works with what I am.
I'm Kara Lefleur, and my pronouns are she, her, or they, them. Also totally cool. And what I wanted to be when I grew up, it changed a lot, which was par for the course for the rest of my life. I know at some point I wanted to be a librarian. I wanted to be one of my dads said that I would be either I'm so good at talking, I'd be either a con artist or a lawyer. And so now I think I'm becoming a psychologist. So I feel like that's a good better use of those skills. And yeah, I think that's, and then I wanted to be an artist for a while. And that's actually what I got my undergrad in.
So our topic today is career expansion, and more specifically, the journey through career expansion and whatever path that takes you on. I've brought you all here today, you all specifically, because I know enough about your journeys that I think you have something interesting to say on this topic. To start us off, I want to go for just a very lighthearted, easy softball question. What does your ideal professional life provide for you?
So I think for me, autonomy is like the biggest thing. Just being able to be in control as well of my ideas and my IP. Also, the way that I go about helping my clients is really important to me. I think that was one of the biggest catalysts for me in starting my business was the autonomy and being able to do things the way that I knew could help people better than what I was doing when I was in-house or an agency, and the barriers that I had to get through to do the things that I wanted to do. So that's one thing for me.
So for me, yeah, definitely like freedom and autonomy. I really don't understand who decided 9 to 5 was my absolute maximum for inspiration. And then that was it, and throw in the towel or work extra hours after and hate yourself anyway. So for me, it's like, I definitely am looking for the autonomy and freedom, but really I got in. So I work in the software industry, and I got into it because I knew I could take care of my family with it, and it's continued to be able to let me do that. And that's really, when you break it down, it's money, but growing up the way that I did, being able to take care of my family has just been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I think as soon as Nicola said that, I was like, yeah, that nails it. like, it's sometimes hard to put into words like what you want or what you need to like nourish yourself. And I think that's such a big thing. And I think that's very common in the indie haul community. I think financial stability is definitely up there, and long-term stability, like sustainability. And sustainability of the creative process is super important because, like Dom just said, 9 to 5, I don't have like an alarm clock. I'm not set that way. You know what I mean? Like things happen when they happen. But the ability to like explore things that I'm interested in, things that I value, and to sort of discover that, I think the freedom to do that is so important. And I think a lot of times in a 9 to 5, we don't have that. Or it becomes a 9 to 8, and then we don't have the time to do our own thing. And when you are working for yourself, you can choose what projects you take on. Sometimes you have to take on projects that you don't love. That's like a fact of it, but you can also choose when to end that relationship. You have control over it. And that goes back to the autonomy, I think. But then also I wanted to do something that I could do beyond. I'm coming right now from a highly physical job. And so I was really limited to how much longer I was a chef and how much longer I could do that physically. And so one of the things was, what can I do when I'm in my 70s and my 80s and beyond? Like, what can I do that's generative beyond right now? So for me, it was also like physical limitations and being aware of that, which I think is a little bit unique to that situation.
Just to add too, I can say that just sanity, like that's what it brings to me, honestly. Like working in-house or even in an agency style design agency where it's all about design and what I would do, it's sometimes too much. And for me, it's not having to deal with office politics and all of that kind of stuff too. Like I really love to be able to handle all of that on my own and just deal with my clients. And I feel like I do that really well versus doing that in-house and having to go through all of the different, channels to properly serve who I'm trying to serve. So sanity, as well as just self-care in general, like being able to take a day off when I need to, like that's great. Just having that freedom. So yeah, speaking to what Dimitri said with freedom and all that, same thing, 100%.
I wanted to talk a little bit more, Kara, what you were talking about of being a chef and being aware of some limitations kind of creeping up and needing to adjust. I think that brings up a really interesting question of how much of your career is reacting to your life versus the other way around. Like how much where's the give and take? How is your career a reaction and how are you reacting to your career?
It's actually really interesting. This is not the first time I've made a career shift. I joke that I'm really good at it. That's almost my career, is the shift. I went to undergrad. I was an artist because that's what I was really interested in. Photography was my BFA from UArts. And from there, I started working at a nonprofit and I got really into fundraising and community building through that. And from that, I ended up going into marketing in an interactive design agency where I started to learn how to code because, like I would want something on a website and marketing needs are like at the bottom of the list. And so I just figured out how to do it on my own. So it would get done and started to teach myself how to code and then ended up in a sort of a life shake up. That was a moment where my career actually was informed by my life. I was with somebody for 11 years and that relationship ended very suddenly and I had to pay my bills. Suddenly they were a lot more of them and they were more. And so I just started picking up odd jobs, and some of those jobs were cooking for other people and for the community members and the development, the web development companies that I was doing sort of contract work for. I would start making dinner for them or lunch, and I got really into cooking, and I started working at restaurants because I wanted to become better at that. So that was kind of, it started off as my career was informed by my life, and then my life was informing my career. And so I worked in restaurants for almost 10 years, and just really building up and like going for it, going for some of the best restaurants in Philadelphia and working with some amazing people and all kinds of perspectives. And that was when I realized that what I really cared about, what I had always really cared about, was other people. It's why I got into food. I love the community. And when I was working in food, that was my like primary focus. And some of my bosses, chefs, did not wanted my focus to be more on food, and I realized that wasn't so much of a problem. A chef told me, he said that I had a heart problem, that I cared more about people than about food, and he meant it as an insult, and I chose not to take it that way. I took that as a sign, or an encouragement that I do care about people. And so that was when I started looking into going back to school for psychology, and going into the helping profession. And that's kind of the journey that I'm on now, and I'm happy to talk about that when that comes up again. But that's sort of it's interwoven. It's a journey, I think, and it's one of those things that kind of it's a ball that gets passed back and forth.
For me, it was a really interesting, like I totally fell into development. I never was good at math growing up. I was always scared in high school. Like I wanted to do programming and game development, but I was like, I'm absolutely trash at any of this math stuff. I'm probably just going to stay. I worked in retail for about 7 years. And towards the end of my, career in retail, I was a store manager at Vans. I was like 22 years old, and I went to a one of those like manager retreats, and I was 22 and I'm super young, and everyone there is tenured there, been there for 20 years, like store managing forever. And those conversations really showed me like, you're going to be here for another 8 years at least, trying to build yourself up into any type of long lasting career here. So around that time, boot camps had come into the popularity, and suddenly everybody was kind of talking about being able to learn to code in 3 months and get a job. And I was a huge sap and fell for it and went to a boot camp, quit my job, moved back home. And yeah, so from then on, it's just been it's been about 5 years now, and I am happily working in software, and really I'm super involved in the community, and now I get to choose a lot of what I do and how I do it. And not only do I get to, because of I work as a developer advocate, so a lot of my schedule is super free. I can work kind of whenever I want to. It's a lot of self-driven kind of, it's very entrepreneurial. It's kind of like being a little startup inside of a startup when you work in developer relations and advocacy. So I actually started a random consulting business doing community growth and helping companies move from like Slack communities to Discord communities and things like that. So really, I just kind of, when things come, I take advantage of whatever I kind of get opportunities for. And then I start to kind of strong arm those opportunities into the things that I exactly want, or what I can kind of continue to gradually build more on top of.
There are a couple things that came up when you asked this question. The first was, just the basic idea of me going to college. I didn't really know how or what job I was going to come out with. I went in as a creative. I knew that I was an artist 100%. I knew I had a design eye, but I was very into illustration at the time and wanted to explore that. So I went to school at UArts for illustration. I went on an editorial illustration route to begin with. So I was doing a lot of caricatures, things that you would see like, in Time, on their little front page back in the day, that kind of stuff, or like Entertainment Weekly, doing like pop culture references, that sort of thing. I did a little bit of that right out of school, but it was really difficult in the beginning. And my friend was actually working at Metro News at the time, and they needed another graphic designer on hand. And since I took a digital track in college, I had the skills, I could do it. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was kind of, just a job to kind of get by at the time. I ended up really enjoying it, and started looking for other graphic design positions that were more in the entertainment realm. So that kind of drove me, that love and passion of doing like caricatures and things like that. I went into doing film posters and Blockbuster. I'd go into Blockbuster and see my art on videos and stuff, which was really cool. Doing one-sheet posters for Ritz Theater down, in Philadelphia and stuff like that. And then I guess the second part of that, from the entertainment industry and graphic design, I started to see where I could do a little bit better on my own. And then I started my own business. But then working on my own had informed another passion that has grown over the past 10 years or so for me, which was the community building behind working on our own and being self-employed, working in our little boxes by ourselves, maybe not having as much interaction as you would in an office. So that has kind of been like a side project for me, but it's become something that it's not so much of a side project anymore. It's something that I do a lot of, and I split my time between both things. Even though my paid job is design, I really enjoy designing, in a sense, these communities and putting things together, facilitating and working on programming and things like that to kind of bring people together so we can share ideas, support one another, and do all of that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm kind of morphing in a way, and different things have been informing my process in the journey, and I expect that to happen onward. It's going to continue to morph, and I love that process. So yeah, life definitely informs what I do, and my work has informed my life for sure.
I'm so glad you brought up community, Nicola. As a member of the 25 and under club, so many of my friends are really, really obsessed with the importance of networking, or what they've been taught and what their kind of project of the importance of networking. And I wonder if any of you have thoughts about the difference between networking and having a community, and how that's shaped your career path or impacted it.
So growing up, I built communities around video games. Like when I was like 13, 14, I was building I remember at one point I had a community that was like 2,000 members, and I was like 13, 14, and I had no idea what I was doing and was kind of just scrambling. And never, ever, ever, not one time did I look at that community and go, at some point, this is going to get me jobs. At some point, this is going to be something that informs my professional life. Fast forward to getting into development. My first job was with a local company called Red Queen. They were a small startup in Philadelphia, about 3 founders. I joined their team, and I helped them build a meetup. So that was my first time doing something in person. Started organizing and teaching a workshop-based meetup every month. So I started to see how freaking awesome it was. And mind you, it was maybe 5 to 10 people coming monthly. It wasn't a big, hurrah, but those people are still connected with me to this day. I talk to them all the time, and it morphed into Reactadelphia, which is the meetup that I run in Philly right now. And that has grown and grown and grown and grown, and has informed a lot of people who I am, and has given me a lot of stepping stones. So for me, what I've realized is that, more and more often, even when you're on social networks and building your following, even when you're meeting someone one-on-one, it's all about these kind of small bit connections of trust. When you start to exemplify trust to people, that's when they start to buy into the things that you're saying. And yeah, you can be shysty and you can get people to trust you, and be a liar and just be really sneaky. But when you are an empathetic person and actually have that two-way street of trust with multiple people, with your communities and the things you're doing, that's networking. That's real networking. All of my career in software development, which has been about 4 or 5 years now, has been me just cold DMing people and becoming friends with them. I don't care about what they eventually it's going to pay off. That type of networking where you're just reaching out to make friends with someone, to learn more, I think a lot of people have a hard time being transparent about why they're reaching out. I think the more honest you are when you're talking to somebody, the easier it is to start to build that level of trust and have realer conversations and get actual hard-earned, accolades from networking, rather than just I was just on another panel talking about staying relevant in tech and what that means, and building your social following or whatever. And I was like, you can be grifty as much as you want. You can be a grifter. You can get tens of thousands of followers, but nobody's engaging with you. Nobody trusts what you're telling them. Nobody trusts what you're putting out. You're just putting out content to put out content. You're just talking to people just to have your voice be heard. And I think you need to really think about, if you're a community builder and a community organizer, or you're thinking about getting into networking, start building and being a part of the communities around you, because those are the people you're going to need to lean on. And you don't know, you may be you may be that single source of help for someone else by being the community creator or facilitator. So yeah, I don't know. Community has played the largest role in my life and my career. And I don't know who I would be if not for the communities that I've surrounded myself with, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Dom just said has to do with authenticity, being authentic, being yourself, being a real human being is so crucial. It's so easy especially for marketers to like be the message, be the brand. It's like, no, you are a human being first, and you are working with or interacting with other humans, and that is crucial. And I think identifying that, having an awareness of it, and empathy, compassion, just like be a human being. Which doesn't sound like it should be so complicated, but can be challenging for some. I think for me, the main difference is that networking is what you can do for me, and community is what can we do for each other. And so I think networking has a tendency to be like insulating. It's all these people of islands, and how do they connect, and what can you do for me? Whereas a community, we are working together towards a common goal. A rising tide floats all ships kind of mentality, which a lot of businesses...
I just was hitting the rising tide in my head.
It's
so
my
we're connecting
favorite. It is my favorite because it's so accurate. Like I remember when I was working in marketing, I was working for a company in Philadelphia, and it was just as I was getting to know Alex Hillman and Indy Hall. And I was amped on community. I was like, yes. And my boss was very amped on networking and getting things out of it and ROI. And I was like, it's not about that. I was like, he said, well, there's only so many pieces of the pie. And I said, yes, but there's unlimited pies. Like we're not competition. It doesn't have to be that way. We are all trying to make Philadelphia a hub of technology and development and, business and small businesses. Like this is all common goals. And it was just not a vision that he saw. I subsequently got laid off from that position and had my pink slip party at Indy Hall, and it was a lot of fun. And then I was unemployed for a while because it was in the middle of a recession. That's a whole other story, which is when I started to teach myself how to code. But I did that because I had support of people in the community that believed in me, that saw me as a human being, that, I'll do whatever I can for other people. Like I'm happy to help. And so when I go and I do need something, I am always flooded with support and people trying to find ways to also lift me up when I might be, when my boat might be taking on some water, because I build that community, because those relationships are important to me. It's a relationship, and that's a two-way street, and that's what community is about. And networking, it's like a poor version of that. It's like a weird photocopy that just doesn't translate and loses a lot of that detail and that richness that is what makes community so successful. Indy Hall is like, that's what they're about, and that's the type of people that it attracts. And so we're drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's probably spiked, so we're enjoying it.
I love that. Yeah. So for me, super introvert over here, have always been not afraid of, but just annoyed with networking in general. It's kind of just a dirty word for people like me. I hate having to... Go ahead.
It's kind of gross. Like
yeah,
it feels gross.
It feels dirty. It feels gross. It's awkward. I don't want to be there. You know what I mean? It's like everybody, like you said, it's kind of like I don't know. It's like people are trying to get something from you, or you're trying to get something from them. And I don't like that kind of interaction. So I have always stayed away from it. And I think that a lot of my career leading up to starting my own business, I was always looked down upon for not wanting to go to these events or not wanting to participate, or whenever I did, I didn't really participate as much as, the big boss would have liked me to, that sort of thing. So starting my own business, I didn't do any networking or anything like that in person so much in the beginning at all. And that was when I started that whole community side of things. What I was missing were true, authentic relationships with people that were like me, that, understood what I was going through, and that we could kind of bounce ideas off of one another, support each other, learn from one another. Kind of like the way that I thought about it was, what I was missing was my studio classes in college, those 6-hour classes where I saw those people every day And we were friends. We understood one another. We weren't, it wasn't dirty and disgusting where you're trying to like get work or hand as many business cards as you possibly can to as many people as you possibly can. It was weird, that whole networking thing. I don't like that. But my whole thing is like, those intimate gatherings, those small gatherings are what matter to me. Like South Philly and South Syracuse, those are small, intimate groups where you get repeating people every month that would come back. They became my friends. It wasn't a business networking group. It was a round table where we would all get together and discuss what we were going through that month or things that we might need help with. And we care about one another. It's like Kara said with Indy Hall, it's definitely that kind of crew where you're helping one another. You're there to learn from one another. And it's necessary. It's something I feel like is definitely necessary and something that I enjoyed working on growing in any possible way when it comes to business, because it is dirty networking. So yeah.
Tell me about a time where you felt like you were moving backwards in your career path and how you feel about it now.
I have a big one on this if y'all want. All right. So, I started my business in 2008 and I was doing pretty well. I started off actually with some clients that I had worked with previously at my in-house job that ended up hiring me at their business. So it was kind of cool, like, working with people that I already knew. And over time, I was married. I got married in 2011, and then 2013 comes rolling along, and not to get into like some crazy life stuff, but life happens, and this is just how it is. Ended up divorced, and there was a lot that was going on there. Mentally, I just wasn't in it with my work. I was like kind of like falling back a little bit and like worried about all of that, splitting. And also I've always been a person that's always been financially like independent. I've never relied on anybody. Even me and my husband at the time didn't have joint accounts or anything like that. I kept everything separate. It's just something that I've always felt was important. So even with that, it was like, I had my business. Was I going to be able to continue doing this just because of my mindset at that time, just for those months that it might take for me to recover just mentally, that kind of thing. So that was when I actually did take an opportunity with a startup for a year and a half. I didn't close my business. I kept it on the side, but I needed something that was a little bit more regular income wise for that time, just while I was healing and like getting my stuff together. I had to move, it was like everything, that's a huge life change, two things: moving, divorce, that kind of stuff. So taking that time to actually recover and work with this group, it also was a reminder to myself how much I did not enjoy working not for myself. And it got me back as quickly as possible to doing my business. Luckily, all of my clients, they were amazing. Like when I told them, I'm back, if you want to continue working with whoever you are working with, that's great. If not, I'm here. They all came back to me. So yay, I guess I was doing something right. And then in general, like the 2020 pandemic, I mean, that was kind of a fallback for me as well. Like a lot of my clients put things on hold, so, financially, it was really rough to kind of sustain. Luckily, I was okay. I learned just how little I could make it by on, and I did okay. I did all right. But now things are ramping up again, and just that general roller coaster of running a business, since 2008 till now. So that's been like 13 years. I know now, whereas before I would get really, really scared where things would take that huge dip. And I was like, oh my gosh, when's the next job going to come? Or how did I like not see this coming? Why didn't I have my savings, all set up and that kind of stuff? Now I'm a little bit more aware, and I understand how that ebb and flow works, and I'm prepared for it when it does happen. I have like an account where I have like a special amount, cash flow that I continuously contribute to and like prepare for those ebbs and flows. So now I'm much more mentally prepared as well as financially stable in those moments. But yeah, I think that that's just kind of a constant thing. When the 2013 divorce and move was a huge impact all at once, there's always going to be these ebbs and flows throughout the process. So you just kind of have to learn how to work through those things. But yeah, that was one of my biggest fallbacks. But I did okay. I'm back. I'm here. I'm good.
I alluded this a little bit earlier. I was working as a store manager, quit cold turkey, moved back home. I knew I was young, and if there was any time for me to make a really drastic decision like that to kind of, throw myself in the deep end of hoping for a career transition, it would be then. And yeah, I got out of the boot camp. I took $16,000 out. I was broke basically my whole life up to that point, and took out $16K so that I could live and pay for the school. Got out and realized that they had not prepared me in the slightest for the Philadelphia job market, because they weren't from Philly and could not have read a street sign if they had been paid to. So they basically set me up with a language that wasn't really hireable in the area for entry level. Spent 3 months job searching, and then went back and built a community called Boot Camped, which was basically just to connect with other people around the world who, I basically wanted to know, is it just me or are other people dealing with this? And if it isn't just me, like, how do we fix it? What do we do? So I spent a year with that community because it became my first startup, my only startup so far. I ran it for about a year. We were basically there to help basically be a personal outcomes coach, where we would not only take you in and help you do interviewing for data structure and algorithms, but we also, had partners and companies to try and get people hired, stuff like that. And we did it for like way cheaper than any other business was doing it, because we didn't want to, further hurt people's pockets after they had just gotten out of a boot camp and it hurt their pockets. So because of that, we weren't really cash flow positive, and, we consistently had to pay our contractor recruiters. So I really wasn't making it out with much more than enough to pay like barely my monthly bills. I remember having to ask my co-founder multiple times for loans and things of that nature. And at that time, I was also back in retail. I worked at Best Buy part-time. And at that point, I'm a year in after having spent $16K. Everyone in my life except my mother, she is a saint. I love that woman to death. Basically was like, dude, you should just like throw in the towel. You're not developing anywhere. Like, just go back to retail. It's what you do. Like, you're a good salesperson, whatever. I told them to kick the super rocks, and did as much as I could. I put the business to the side, gave it to my co-founder completely, and threw myself into teaching myself JavaScript and React, because it was this extremely hireable framework for the area, and I knew that so many startups were using it. So 2 months into doing that, I got my first job, and that was at Red Queen, and I was back to making my same salary, 40K from Vans, and it's just been up from there. But that year, especially after taking such a huge risk on myself, and basically being poorer than I've ever been individually, was definitely really demoralizing, very hard, and I spent many nights, kind of second guessing the decisions that I'd made, but I stayed the course, and it worked out in the end. And back to our earlier conversation, it only worked out because of the communities that I had built and involved myself with along the way. Without those communities, I wouldn't have had people to tell me like, that I could do it, and that I was just being foolish, and that it's hard for everybody.
Having made a career of career transitions, I felt a lot of times I felt like I was the entry level job. Like everything was an entry level. I felt like I was starting from scratch. It felt Sisyphean. It was demoralizing to consistently be like, well, I'm still making what I was making. And then I realized, all of these experience, like I was making what I was making 2 years ago or 3 or 5 years ago, and I'm still here, but I'm in a new industry and I'm starting all over again. And there wasn't this like, as you move up in a specific role and get promotions, or you get a new job and it gets paid more. I was shifting. I was making all of these like lateral moves. And that, after a course of several years, was hard. Like it was hard to not see like the fruit of my labor. I knew I was working hard. I knew I was learning new things. And so like, that's what I really sort of connected to, was not like, what was I making? What was my financial product? But like, what was I learning? And I love, there's a Bill Nye quote, is everyone knows something you don't. Like everyone you meet, like you're going to learn something from every experience, from every person, from every choice and decision that you make, that others make. There's so much that you can learn, and that has its own intrinsic value. Unfortunately, I can't pay my rent with that value. So there is that sort of component of it, and that does make it challenging. So that cycle of starting over can be really hard. It can also be hard because of what we value in society versus like money versus experience. And now, that I am making this transition into a whole new field in which experience is actually very highly valued. Like I have wisdom now that I did not have 10, 20, 15 years ago, 5 minutes ago. I have wisdom now I didn't have 5 minutes ago based on this conversation. And I'm able to take that in now because of these experiences. But I can say specifically, I remember when I made the decision to go back to school, I went from working at a very high-end, very well-regarded, prestigious restaurant, and I went to a restaurant that was still really pretty great, but it was a 9 to 5 version of being a line cook. And I clocked in, I did my work, and I left. And it was this kind of job. It was very hollow, and I kept that job for about 6 months before I was like, this is killing me. And it's not furthering my goals. And so that was the moment then when I realized it's okay to take a job that is not the level where you are, as long as you are working in some area of your life to further your goals. Whether that's to learn something or to have more time to work on side projects or to be able to focus, just to do your job and then focus on your life. Like Nicola was talking about, like making transitions, moving, all of these things. And so then I went into a front of house position, and that was like a 180. I had been a highly regarded chef. I was very talented. I was skilled at what I did. And suddenly I was a food runner at a restaurant, which is kind of like almost the bottom rung of the front of house hierarchy. And I didn't know shit, according to everybody that I worked with. And they let me know that they thought I was just off the cart. Like I was, and meanwhile, like I knew more about food than all of them. And I would always blow them away with my knowledge about food. I also have this problem where I look like a zygote. I look very young for my age. People don't realize that I am the age that I am. They often underage me by 10 to 20 years. And so when people started realizing how old I was, what my experience was, where I had worked, they had a whole newfound respect for me. But I had to like prove myself all over again. But also like I knew my worth. I knew who I was. And I didn't take their opinion of me into account. Like it didn't affect me in the same way. But that being said, that was still, an experience to go through. And it was hard. It was definitely like ego. Like it's your ego has a lot to do with that. And that could be hard to combat.
Okay, I have one last question for us today. If you could go back in time and give yourself at the beginning of your professional life one piece of advice, what would it be? Also, if 10 or 20 or 30 years from now you find yourself in a big career transition again, what's something that you hope you will remember?
If I were to go back and give myself advice, I think it would be to utilize my community creation skills faster. I only got the first job that I got in software because so he had posted it in the Philly dev Slack, and he was like, hey, we're looking for a senior dev, like need somebody who's a first hire, ready and willing to, build out our code base and maintain it. I messaged him and was like, that's not me in the slightest. You will not get any senior level work from me, but I would love to help out. I love what you're doing with the company, whatever. I was like, and not only that, I can come on and build a community around your product and the things that you're doing. I can come in dev, but also use the things that I'm good at. And I didn't know that was like, I just threw that in there. Like, I wasn't sure if that was going to actually get me in the door or not. This is all just like a kind of throw it at the wall and hope it sticks. And that's like really the only reason I got the job was because I had a lot of like really good community curation behind me. I had ran the boot camp community and had a proven kind of track record. And I just wish I had known that earlier. And I think that it would have been really comforting to know that uh, that Philly is as awesome as it is. I grew up in South Jersey, so I've always kind of been like the Philly stepchild, and only been to the city for once or twice type of things. And now I live in the city, and this community and the people that work and live and thrive here are just my favorite people. And I wish I had leaned into that a little bit sooner.
What do you hope you'll remember the next time you have to make a major career shift?
All the fear and stuff that you're worried about, and the things that you think might happen, like you never know. Like no matter how much wisdom and actions you've made that have led to certain consequences, that it's worth it to still take the risks that you think you need to take. Because if you believe, and I think this is the hardest part, it's a really weird Jay-Z interview that I'd heard. He was talking to his uncle, and his uncle had said to him, he was telling his uncle, like, I'm going to be the biggest rapper, like, just you wait, just you see. And his uncle was like, shut up, like, go back and work at whatever. Like, how it's 1 in a million that could ever happen. And he said, most people would be mad, like, why are you dousing my flame? Why are you telling me no? But he said, I realized that person just never had the imagination to believe that they could do it. So how could they have ever believed that I could do it? And I think that for me, the only way that I've been successful is believing, even in the hardest times, that I do have the capability, and trusting in my own personal process and not listening to all the extra stuff. I think that is like the key, the absolute key. And I think 10, 20, 30 years from now, that's hard to keep intact, is that trust in your ability to follow through. So I think that's what I'd do. Can't wait to see and meet y'all at some point. And thank you so much for having me.
Nice meeting you.
Really good to meet you. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Take care. So the biggest thing that has come up for me over and over again is just the quote that nothing is as difficult as it initially seems. It's a constant thing in my life, in business and personally, just kind of, I have this idea of how things are going to be, or how difficult it's going to be, all of the steps that I'm going to have to take to get there. And I'm a type of person that likes to lay everything out and, task it all out. And it's usually way more than it needs to be, and every situation, as scary as it might be, is never as difficult as it initially seems. That's my number one thing. Also the fear, not to be so afraid. And I think that those are both intertwined in that way, it's also never as scary as it initially seems. And let's see, what else? Oh, the community building aspect, or just relationship building, and not being so afraid as an introverted person to reach out to people and to make connections and build solid relationships to help me along the way. That's something that in the beginning, and I'll admit it, just starting out, I was the type of person that was like, oh, I'm going to start my own business, number one, because I want to do everything the way I want to do it, do all of that kind of stuff, help people how I want to do it, make my own processes and everything. That's great. And it's something that I think a lot of creatives that are going into business need to be able to do, but it's also detrimental in that you're not supported with other folks that, can help you along the way and maybe get you there a little bit faster, sharing knowledge, and like what Kara was saying in the previous question, just basically learning from one another. And like, you should always be absorbing, I'm constantly learning every day. It's one of the things that I love about my life and my business. I want to be learning every day. I don't know everything that I need to know. And that's something that I should be constantly doing to evolve. And that's natural. And you shouldn't feel like you have to know it all to start. It's also a perfectionist thing that I've slowly had to get over in my life, like from grade school onward. Like, I was a straight A student. I had to make sure everything was 100%. My fifth grade teacher, she talked to my parents before doing this to me, but she gave me a B just because she wanted me to have the B to get over not getting the A's. It ruined me. I was in fifth grade and I decided that I was going to ground myself. I was no good. Like, oh my gosh, how did I possibly do this? I had failed my parents and all of that kind of stuff. But like, I'm glad that she did that at that age, because it kind of, you know, it set me up in a better way to get through life, you know. But just even now, like, there are things that I've been trying to do for the past year that I'm so caught up in making sure it's perfect before it gets out, making sure that everything is 100% before, you know, releasing it to the public, being scared that it's not going to be good enough or anything like that. But I've learned you can reiterate, you can like do things, add on to, make things better, and it should be that way. So yeah, those are the three things I think that I would tell myself starting out. You know, like, I've thought about my future in the sense that, you know, am I always going to be a designer? Probably, but I've also thought about making a transition in my retirement into genealogy and like doing all of that kind of work, because I love research, and, you know, maybe having both businesses, but I'd like to do, you know, a little bit of genealogy and transition into that. And I've, you know, been stuck on the perfectionist side of that as well. Like, will I be able to go into that at that, you know, age, not knowing everything that goes into it? Like, can I still do that kind of stuff? Can I still offer my research or like get certified and do all of that kind of stuff at that age? Hell yeah, I can. You know, like, why the hell not? You know, like, go out and do it. So I won't be as afraid as I would have been when I was starting out. You know, in 2008, I was scared to death, but I did it. And I've always had that drive. I think that's something that we all need in this as well. You can be fearful, and, you know, that's a natural thing, but having some drive behind it to get you to those places, to do the things that you were incredibly afraid to do, it's always worth it. You know, jump in, just do it. Or as Alex says, just fucking do it.
Okay. So advice I would give to myself: it will be okay. It is going to be okay. Like, it might not be what you expect. You might not end up where you think that you're going, but you'll end up somewhere, and it will be okay. And you're not going to be homeless. And if you are, you will live out of your car for 6 months, and it will be fine. And you will find a place to live after that. And you will find amazing housemates, because that is everything will work out. It will be okay. I think that is the number one thing. The other one is it's going to be okay. Don't be complacent. Don't stay in a situation that isn't good for you, that you're not growing from, that isn't somehow contributing to your life or your future or who you are as a human being. Don't be afraid to leave a bad situation. Don't stay in a bad situation longer than you should or than you need to. Like, the universe will provide. Like, you will figure it out, but you have to go out and find those things. Those won't come to you. You have to go out, and you have to have the courage to go out and find them before it's too late, before those situations change you fundamentally as a person. Sometimes, you know, you'll grow from that, but sometimes it will take a really long time to recover and to find yourself again. So if something doesn't feel right, believe in that and trust it, and move forward for yourself. You know, not for yourself, but move forward in ways that improve your life and the lives around the people around you. This is kind of a piece of advice that I might give to my future self and to my past self. It's kind of both, is pay attention and be present, because someday you will miss this. Someday there will be some aspect of the life that you are leaving that you will no longer have. And you might not remember if you don't pay attention to what you're feeling now. If it hurts, if it feels good, if it's exciting, if it's sad, if it's stressful, if you're crying, if you're cheering, whatever the experiences that you're having, be there for it. Show up and experience it, because someday you'll have a different kind of hard, or you'll have a different kind of joy, or you will have a joy where you had pain, and you will miss this if you don't pay attention. If you're not here in this moment, you will miss this someday, and that's okay, but remember it.
I love that for just the be present part. It's something, honestly, that I've been just working on in the past, I'd probably say like 5 years, like just being present and mindful. Like, that is huge advice. I love that, Kara.
I remember when I was a line cook, there's a very specific experience. There's a cacophony of sounds from the dish pit and the buzz of people and utensils clattering on metal and sizzling and sound. It's a cacophony. It's 100%. And I remember, like, I was hot, I was tired, I had been on my feet for 15 hours. I just wanted to go the fuck home and go to bed and not be here. And I stopped and I was like, I will miss this someday. And
Yep.
100% now that I haven't been in a kitchen for 100 years, for a year, you know, I am so grateful that I took the moment to like record that, because I can remember it. And I remember where I came from because of it. And I remember what I got from those moments.
Thank you once again to all of our panelists, and thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's Remote Roundtable. For more events, remote roundtables, and the rest of our events, there's a bunch of fun ones. You can check out all of our social media or head to indiehall.org/events. Of course, if you're interested in membership or a tour, you can go to indiehall.org. If you have any questions about Remote Roundtable, future events, our panelists, membership, or just want to get set up for a tour, you can always email team@indiehall.org. Hopefully one day I'll see you online.